Okay, it's time for your first lesson in running a brainstorm using design thinking methodology. Now, the first lesson is going to be quite short since the methodology here is mostly just common sense. What I'm really trying to get you to do is to spend time doing this bit in your brainstorm session by explaining a little bit about why it's important rather than teaching you exactly how to do it. Mostly because, as I just said, it's pretty much common sense, but also because it's contextual and you'll all have your own style and ways in which you want to treat this bit, and that's absolutely fine. Do it the way that feels right for you. Don't be fooled by the shortness, though.
Liar!
This honestly might be the most important part of the whole process. You're setting yourself up for success here, and there's basically an entire phase of the design thinking process that is dedicated to doing exactly this, and that's the understand phase, and it's the one that you always start with. Okay, so you're ready for your brainstorming session. We're going to treat these 3 lessons as though you've got an hour and a half to run it, and you're going to be splitting that session into 3 30-minute blocks. And your first 30-minute block is going to be dedicated to establishing your axioms. So in the spirit of doing exactly that, let's make it clear what I'm talking about when I say axiom. Broadly speaking, there's 3 definitions in play here. There's what I suppose you might call proverbial axioms, like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, or a stitch in time saves 9. That is to say, statements that are established and accepted as being true or are self-evidently true. Then there are mathematical axioms, which, to be honest, I don't really understand, but Google tells me is stuff like 2 + 2 = 4. And then finally, there's the one that we're interested in, which I suppose you'd call the philosophical definition of axiom or a debate axiom. And it looks a little bit like this. An axiom is a statement that is taken to be true to serve as a premise or starting point for further reasoning and argument. And it's that second part that we're really focused on here. Before you all start coming up with ideas in this session, you need to make sure that everyone is actually clear on the starting point and the direction that you all need to be taking together. You can think of it like a heading in Star Trek, or shipping if you prefer. If my heading is 88 degrees and yours is 92, when we take a few paces, there's not really any problem. If we take a few more, we're still fine. But obviously, the further we walk, the further we drift away. Get a few minutes into the workshop, and that gap is going to be concerning. Get to the end of the workshop, and that gap is going to be alarming, and it's going to be causing you some serious problems in your prioritization and selection phase, which is what we'll cover in episode 3, lesson 3. Viewed in the context of the entire project, as every workshop should be, and it's not good. The added danger that you have here is that there's a definite sort of slowly boiling a frog problem in play. It's kind of impossible to tell at what point in this process you'll realize that you've messed up. Is it going to be 5 minutes into the workshop, 20 minutes into the workshop, at the end of the workshop, right after you've finished the workshop, you think, oh God, I'm going to have to get everyone back in because this just wasn't clear. Or, is it going to be further along? What point are you going to be like, oh, we're in a lovely warm bath, but it's getting a little bit too hot, or you're suddenly flailing around in a cauldron of pain and misery? We have to make sure that we're on the right heading from the very start. We must be walking the same path, and that path will only really become clear as you move through the project and start to see problems with it. So let's have a look at an example. I might say to you, I need to come with ideas for sandwich boxes. There might be 5 of us in the workshop, or 4 of us, and each of you, come up with one of these ideas, right? We've got the sort of, cardboard cafe style box for sandwiches. You've got this sort of junior school, like in the shape of a bread type thing. I'm not really sure how much use that would be. You've got this god-awful plastic monstrosity that is just nasty in every way. And then you've got this lovely sort of expensive Yeti lunchbox thing. Different uses, different price points. There's a whole lot of difference in here. And at least two of those ideas are probably a complete waste of time. And that's going to be annoying for you. But more importantly, it's going to be annoying for the people who, without knowing it, because you didn't establish it, were on the wrong heading from the very start of the process. So how can we deal with this? How can we stop this sort of thing happening in a workshop? I've got some tips for you. So really the first thing that you need to do is contextualize the work. Take the time to explain what you're doing, why you're doing it, and why you need the people that you've brought together to achieve the objectives that you've set out. Make people aware of why they're there, generally and specifically. Why are we here? Why are you here? Next, try to give some background. What research do you have? What supporting materials are available to help the participants do an even better job of coming up with ideas? I don't know, our ideas are going to be handed over to the product team for development. That's why one of the reasons that Mia is here today. So bear in mind that we need to make sure that they're compatible with the word that a product team would do. Or I don't know, we've discovered that everyone who uses this product, when they see yellow, they'll immediately buy, which then, of course, feeds into the next thing that you need to do, which is establishing your design constraints or guardrails, if you prefer. Don't make it yellow in this case, but any other limitations that you're aware of, whether they're external limitations like, I know, the laws of physics, or internal limitations. I don't know, that might be something like our client is using Azure, so everything that we come up with has to be compatible with that cloud platform. I'm using that example without really knowing if it works, but hopefully you kind of know what I mean. One thing, though, is never introduce budgetary or time constraints. People have a tendency to misjudge both of those things. You might, if you say we've only got X amount of money, someone might have a great idea in their head, but they might think, well, that's far too expensive. I don't know. I'll give you an example. Someone might say, let's write the name of the company that we're coming up with branding ideas for. Let's write it on the moon. Obviously, that's way too expensive. But what you can do is sort of backtrack from that. You might get to skywriting or a billboard from there. So leave out budget and time constraints. Also, do try not to be too prescriptive and leave wiggle room and be careful how you phrase things. So I can give you another example. In our sandwich boxes, don't say things like must be cardboard because that's better for the environment than plastic. Ask for environmentally friendly options instead, because those ideas might go far beyond the material itself. And the context is really important. A really great example of this actually is this problem that we're seeing with reusable water bottles. Yes, the idea of a water bottle you use more than once is much better than single-use plastics. But because they've sort of become a fashion accessory, we've actually created a situation where the typical life cycle of a reusable water bottle is actually nowhere near long enough for the higher environmental production cost over a single-use plastic bottle to be offset by the amount of time that they're being used for, right? So context is important. Next, I would say use name by function wherever possible. This is actually something that Cass Holman talks about, a toy designer. She's amazing. Look her up on Instagram. She's incredible. Or watch the abstract episode with her in it. But when I say name by function, ask for things like come up with ideas to keep sandwiches fresh for as long as possible once they've left the supermarket, or come up with ideas to transport lunch from one place to another, right? See what the difference is there? If I say to you, design a mug, you've already got all of these kind of, tropes about mug design. You've got what a mug looks like. It's a spherical thing with a hole in the top and it's sealed at the bottom and it's got a handle on it, and you're only going to be doing variations of that. And this is the example that Cass Holman gives. If I say to you, design a way to transport liquid, you're going to be far more open to other ideas because a sponge can transport liquid. My glasses case can transport liquid. A hose can transport liquid if you suck it up and put your thumb over each end. Leave people room to, be free with their ideas. Finally, ask if you've been clear. So say to people, does that make sense? Are we clear with this? Do you understand what we're trying to do here? And be ready to have some discussion about things. Be ready for a little bit of back and forth. That's why you've got 30 minutes for this bit, because it will give you that opportunity to kind of, go backwards and forwards and make sure that you have established your axioms. You are clear about what you're doing. You all understand that you're talking about the same thing. And then one final note, of course, take notes here. So as you're having this discussion, make sure you're writing things down and record it, because it will be useful when you come back to your prioritization exercise at the end. So here ends lesson 1. Next time, we're going to be doing the brainstorm. So join me in episode 2 for Do the Brainstorm. I thank you.